Thank you. It's such a privilege to be here today. Thanks, Deborah, for inviting me. So appreciate this. So I am so thankful to be able to share and encourage and just help you guys along the way. So if you have any questions, we'll save them for the end, and I'll be staying after too. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to help you out with anything. So here I'm going to help your children thrive through homeschooling. And let's see if I can figure out how to use this. This way. Sit down, okay, got it. Thank you so much. All right. So these are the different things I'm going to go over with you today. And the first thing I'm going to work on is developing a homeschool blueprint with you. And this actually was printed in the Czech Homeschool magazine back in April, but it's also on their website, on their blogs as well. So if you want to just touch base and look at their blog posts, and on the blogs, it's actually called Benefits of a Family Homeschool Discussion. And in the magazine, it's creating a family homeschool blueprint. But what I did was I printed out a little blueprint for you guys, and what this is meant is for you to take home and have a discussion with your family. And so I'll explain some of the different things that I'd like you to discuss, and then you can just take that information and write it down here, and that will help you so much as you're working throughout the homeschool year, and if you're feeling discouraged or just want to throw in the towel, it gives you something that you can relate back to and just regain your focus. So some of the things that I would like you to discuss is, first of all, your motivations. And given that each family is different and we each have unique dynamics and unique circumstances, all of our homeschools will look different, all of our priorities will look different. And so that's why it's so important for you to sit at home with your own family and discuss this type of thing. So as you discuss your reasons for homeschooling with your family, you're going to gain insight into what they are expecting, what's important to you all, and all of those things. And then after that, I would like you to discuss the value of virtuous character. What kind of character do you want your children to have? Do you want them to be forgiving, loving, and all of these things? And when they exhibit these virtuous qualities, it actually will invite trust and respect, just like when we exhibit these qualities, it invites trust and respect. And we are the #1 influencer in our homeschools, in our children, and especially when they're home with us, we are going to be really being an example of what we would want them to be like. So sometimes when I look at my children and I see the way they're reacting at stuff, sometimes I look at myself and say, you know what, I could probably, improve there as well. And then next, I would like you to discuss the benefits of learning. And really, with the expansion of knowledge, our children are willed an opportunity to serve in many more ways. So if you have a discussion with your child about the types of jobs that they can have with various levels of education, like maybe what it would take to serve in the military or go to a college or further a career, or even if they're just wanting to go into the workplace right away afterward. My first child has already graduated, and she actually has what they call Turner syndrome. So she has a missing chromosome, and so we took her school and we extended it. And I want to encourage you guys in that we don't have to have our homeschool set where they are in this grade and then this grade and then this grade and so on. We can slow that down if need be. And when I wrote my book, well, she's really good at writing and editing. We've gathered that over the years because she's always wanted to write or read, and she's one of these with what she has going on is she would just pace if she didn't know what to do. So eventually what I decided was, well, if I noticed that she was pacing, maybe if I got her an iPad, she could read or write. And so consequently, that's pretty much what she always did, was read or write in between me directing her to do other things. So through the high school years, because her reading and writing were her strengths, she was a little bit faster in that area, where in the maths and sciences she was very slow in. And it took her almost 7 years to complete high school, and we did graduate her this year at age 21, and she's going on to be a certified editor. But we did slow it down, and I didn't do the same courses as I would for my second child, who's over there, so everybody can look at you. She has different aspirations. She would like to go to one of the military academies. Ultimately, she just wants to be a fighter pilot. And with that, you have to have your pre-calculus or calculus and trig and all of these things that I do not know how to do. So we incorporated some video lessons into our high school because for me to learn and then teach would have been very difficult. And so we just changed some of the things that she has going on in her high school years. So she'll be next to graduate next year, so we're working on a lot of scholarships and things like that. And on my website, I do have a resource page that links to scholarships and different things. So if you're ever interested in that, it can just link you to other pages very easily. So the next thing I would like you to discuss with your family is your family's vision for their homeschool. Because some people will want different things than others, and some of your kids will want different things than others. And so you may look at some of your kids and they go, I just want to go hiking once a week, Mom. And that's so important to me. Or like in her case, I want to fly, Mom, so let's look for an enrichment program where she can fly, So you'll want to know some of these things, because as you see some of the interests that they have, you can actually find things, talk to neighbors. Some of these vendors here, like your enrichment programs and Check and myself and all of these other homeschoolers, and find all these different things that you can do to help in their interests. And there's hiking groups and all kinds of different things that they can do, and maybe these are important things to them in their homeschool. And I find when children get to do some of what they love, they're more willing to do some of the book work and some of the other things that they want to do in their future, and that portion will help them get to what they love to do. So you can work through that with them, and then also discuss what life might look like after homeschooling. What are they interested in? Are they going to go to college? Are they going to go into the workforce? What is important to you and your husband, your wife, your children? And then summarize that. And as you summarize that, you're going to fill this out, and you're going to look at, what are the values that we have as a family? And then what is our mission? And then what is our vision? And in here I have shared, and in the blog post, I have shared my vision and values and so on. And so I picked a verse for our values, and then for our mission, I had a mission for myself, really. Raise my children to know they are created uniquely in God's image, provide a caring and edifying educational environment, teach my children how to love and serve others, and equip my children for the work that God is calling them to do. So yours will look different than mine, but that's why I want you to have a discussion with your family. And then my big vision at the top is to raise competent individuals who answer God's calling to pair their knowledge and gifts with compassion as they serve others. So that's our ultimate goal in our homeschool. So when we look at homeschooling, we also have to think about the homeschool laws in our state. And some of you have likely been homeschooling and know some of the laws, but it's always good to review them because they can change from year to year. It has been pretty stable, but we never know what can change. So it's just good to review and sometimes just to refresh as well. So I'm going to go over that. And as you homeschool, some people have a question, who can homeschool their children? Well, parents can homeschool their children, or a parent-designated adult can also be responsible for the children's education. Now, you can also use the enrichment programs and other things like the music and things like that to put into your homeschool, but ultimately you are responsible for your children's education. No public funding is available for the supplies that you use, although when you go into some of the enrichment programs and stuff, you can register with the district, and then there will be funding available there. And then some other programs do offer funding and help with your homeschool as well. But just per se, the government is pretty much going to be through your enrichment programs. All right, and the other thing to know is that our homeschools are not accredited by the state or our local homeschool district. So we are responsible for their education. Now there are 3 options in which we can homeschool legally in Colorado. And so I'll go over that. So option 1 would be is if you put in a notice of intent to your homeschools themselves, or to your district themselves. And you can do that to any district in Colorado. So you'll submit a notice of intent to homeschool 14 days prior to starting. And you actually have to submit that annually. So that means every year, not just the first year. I have that question so often from people, or the comment that I didn't realize I had to do that every year. So that's very important. And then you just have to have the student's name, age, address, attendance hours, which is a minimum of 172 days for 4 hours on average a day. And you do not have to put grade level in. Sometimes the districts will ask about that, but so you know, you do not have to put the grade level in. And then you just have to submit that notice of intent for children that are 6 years old by August 1st, all the way up till they're 16. But you do not have to teach them until they're 7. These are the subjects that they recommend that you teach, but it's not necessarily every year. And specific curriculum is not required. So you can choose whatever curriculum that you would like to use in your children's education. And then nationally standardized tests. Those have to be taken 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th grades. And they have to achieve a composite score, which means everything all together, math, science, everything, put all together and averaged out. And they have to achieve the 13th percentile minimum. So just so you guys know that. And there are 4 tests that are accepted in Colorado, and they're listed up here. There are some tests that are not accepted, like your SAT, ACT, CLT, those are college entrance tests. The STAR test is not accepted because it doesn't give it a composite score. And there's other tests as well. But basically, these 4 tests are what they accept. Now, in lieu of testing, you can choose to have an evaluator evaluate your child. And it has to be an evaluator that is an acceptable evaluator, which would be a licensed teacher, a teacher who is employed by an independent or parochial school, a licensed psychologist, or a person with a graduate degree, like a master's or a doctorate. And what they would do is they usually have letterhead, and they either want like a portfolio or maybe some samples of your children's work, or maybe they want tests, and they'll just want you to submit that to them. Sometimes they can do that in person, or sometimes they have you send it. And what they do is they just put on their letterhead that the child is learning to the best of their ability and they're making sufficient academic progress. So record keeping, these are the things that you need to keep records of, basically your attendance, your testing or your evaluation, and the immunization records. And you don't have to turn those in, but they just ask that you have them on hand, or the exemption as well. So if the superintendent has probable cause to believe that your homeschool program is not in compliance, then they can give you 14 days notice, and they can go ahead and ask for your records and review them. Now, option 2. Option 2 would be to enroll in an independent school. And Christian Home Educators of Colorado, they recommended their school. There's many schools around across the state that you can register under. But if you enroll with a Colorado-based independent school, otherwise sometimes known as an umbrella school, you just comply with that school's policies. And then the third option is if you have a current Colorado teacher's license. And if you do, then there's no reporting or testing requirements for you. Now, if you have submitted a notice of intent to your school or to a school district, your children can actually access the public schools extracurricular interscholastic activities. So that is a nice option for us in Colorado. Not every state has that. And so I recommend to explore that option if your kids are into sports. But we also have a Colorado Sports League and many other options through the state of Colorado as well. And when you are set to graduate your children, just know that because our homeschool programs are not accredited, the state of Colorado does not give us requirements. So I usually just recommend checking in with your districts or the prospective colleges or wherever they're going to go, and to set up your 4-year plan for your homeschools. And then when they are ready and they have completed everything that you have set for them to complete, you can issue their diploma. And then usually I say also do a transcript, especially if they're going to college, because they're going to want to look at that as well. What kind of classes they took, what they've learned, etc. All right, so there are some considerations that you may want to think about before you choose those resources or those tools that you want to use to educate your children. One of the first things that I usually talk about with people is the 3 different ways that we learn the best, which is listed here. Now, if your children learn best visually, they can learn best usually by reading or looking at graphics or etc. Kinesthetic would be like hands-on. And then your auditory, which would be listening. Now, just to think about this, even though we each learn best in one way, it's best to still learn all the other ways, because that way we can strengthen the weaker senses by using our stronger senses. And if we ever lose that weaker sense or the stronger sense, we can, fill in where we need to. So I had a neighbor child from when I was a kid that he was like 4 years old, and he got a tumor in his brain and he lost his sight completely. But what was really interesting, and I took my kids back there, I'm from Wisconsin, he has a chocolate factory. He had 2 chocolate factories for a little while. He's back down to 1. But he makes all the chocolates and sells them and has a Braille cash register. He knows my voice and the kids' voices and everything. And he sat with them for an hour just teaching him how he makes everything. He knew where everything was in his store. And I just, keep thinking about that and how God really used all the other senses to fill in where he lost that sense. And I just think about that with our homeschools as well, is that we can do that, just kind of work on all the senses, and that way if they ever need to fill in or strengthen those other senses, they can. So take, for instance, obsidian. Like if you look up obsidian in the encyclopedia, you can see, well, it can be many different colors, and it's shiny, and how it's maybe some of the different ways it's been used. Maybe back in history, you might find out that they shined it up and made mirrors. They cut it up and chipped it with rock, and they made arrows, and so on. So that would appeal to a visual learner. But let's say you have obsidian, and you get to have your kids look at that as well, and then they can see it shiny and they can feel it. And then maybe they can chip it and make their own little arrow, or they can shine it and see, how reflective it is. And then you can even tell them that, in modern day, that they use obsidian a lot in surgical tools because of the properties of its sharpness as well. So, do you think that a child would maybe remember obsidian a lot more after you've used all these senses to learn about it versus just reading or just showing? So also when you have children, with the different children that I have, it seems like they're all different. So my first daughter, she loves sitting and reading and writing, of course, and she'd sit in my lap all the time, and it was just really heartwarming to me. And my second daughter was that way pretty much too. Well, then I got to my son. And he could never sit still. And still to this day, I mean, his brain is just wired very differently. He's more like engineering minded. I'm not. And the things that he tells me and fills me in is just absolutely amazing. But I got to kindergarten, and I was, reading with him and such, and he just didn't seem to read as well. And he's just all over the place. And so I would read to him, and I'm like, oh, surely he just does not remember anything. He's never going to answer any questions. He's just never going to learn. And I would start asking him these questions, and he would know everything, like even better than my other kids. And so I realized, oh, well, he needs to move to learn. And if I would have him sit still, he wouldn't know anything. He wouldn't know any answer because he was concentrating too much on sitting still. So if you have one like that, you may want to use some of the fidget type tools. And over the years, I've realized some of the loud ones like this drive me nuts. So we stay with the quieter ones. And he also loves anything activity-based. So anytime we would come up to any science experiment or anything that I can incorporate activity into, that made him happy. So some of the games that you guys can incorporate would be like, the simple Uno game, but you can not only just play Uno with them, you could, have him pick a card and then add whatever he picks next, tell you the color, maybe even multiply, or even if you get to one of those like 2 times, it'd be 2 times whatever. So you can use different games to learn different types of things. So even on dominoes, whatever connects, let's add them or let's multiply them, etc. So those are some of the things that you can do. And then one of the other things that I find very helpful, especially like in those early math, is that, what do you call these? Can't remember what they're called. Yeah, they're manipulative, but they're something cute, Unifix cubes. That's what they are. So you can get these pretty much at any store. And the nice thing with the early math is you can actually show them what they're learning. So if they have 3, you can break it apart into 3. You can show them that they have 3 and that can connect together and you have 3 and so on. And then if you have 4, you can actually take a different color and you can add them together, and now what do you have is 7. So these are very helpful, and I usually recommend these for like your early math, probably like kindergarten through like 2nd grade maybe, and even older if they need it. But those are very, very helpful. And then there are some other things that you can do is just to enjoy the togetherness, learn together, incorporate experiences like if you're learning about stirrups, maybe there's something at the Pioneer Museum that, because my kids kept asking me, well, what's a stirrup? And I'd be like, well, it's pictured, Well, if we went to the museum and then they really knew what it was. So you can incorporate those experiences into your homeschool to help them learn. Take breaks as needed, and my husband always tells me, hey, kids are not robots. Just, if they need a break, just give them a break. Go outside and play. So just be happy to take those breaks with them and, relax yourself as well. Another thing that you might want to think about as you're looking at like curriculum and things like that is your ability to customize. And here's Amber in an airplane, and we've done the AeroLab program. I don't know if anybody's heard of AeroLab. So we've really enjoyed that, and she's been able to fly. She's also in Civil Air Patrol, and that's really just encouraged a lot of her interest once we figured out she did have that interest. And then, sometimes I just think if they have that interest and they're getting to delve in that interest, and then they realize, oh wait, these are the studies that'll help me get to where I need to go, they work harder at those studies. So if you can, just really try to figure out what their interests are and then just delve into it, have fun with it. And with that in mind, you can explore some of the different options. It just stopped here for a second. But you can consider some of the different options that you have available to you. So, what kind of curriculum do I have? What kind of different programs are available, etc. And have a discussion with your child, again, about the types of jobs that they can get with the various levels of education. And then look at some of the benefits of some of the different ways that you can learn. Maybe you like learning in a group, or they like learning in a group. And that might be something where, Tiffany will share with you where it would be really a good thing. And then other than that, some kids want to be more learning on their own, and maybe they like to learn more with books, and that might be another option as well. And there is pre-planned curriculum. There's video lessons out there, which I talked about that we incorporated, especially for those high school years. And so all these things are great tools that you can use to help educate your children. So when you start selecting those tools, then I just ask that you'll want to review those tools, and you'll want to go back to this blueprint that you created as you look at those tools, and you'll look at it and say, hey, do these tools and resources that I'm using for my children, does that align with my goals? Do I want them to learn with a Christian education? Then I want some Christian material, to work with that. Or any of those types of things, you'll just want to refer back to this vision, to your blueprint, and then just double check that with the tools that you have selected. And that'll help just kind of guide you and make you feel like you're more on that consistent page. Your consistent goals and values actually encourage unwavering faithfulness in life. And then you'll want to apply that same principle as you review your commitments. Do the commitments that your children be involved in, are they aligning with your goals and your values? What kind of benefits do they have? And boy, if you have like 10 commitments that you want to do, which ones will give you the most benefit? And with my husband and I, he's like, well, tell you what, you can do 2 a month, because otherwise you get overwhelmed. So you may want to limit your commitments as well. So think about the effect on your family life. We like to eat at home. That's one of the biggest things, is we have supper at home together as a family. So a lot of our commitments work around that. There are a few that we have made exceptions for, like the Civil Air Patrol. But for us, that was one of our most important things, especially as the children were younger. And sometimes we get some unplanned detours. So when that happens, and if you've been homeschooling for any amount of time, we all get unplanned detours. So when my 4th daughter was born, her name is Lauren, I actually hurt a disc in my back, and I was laid up on the couch for 6 months. Anytime I got up, it was just such intense pain. I just couldn't do anything. So we had my mom come, friends. My husband would try to do everything he could. My older girls would start doing laundry and a lot of the things that I couldn't do. And up to that point, I always thought I was Superwoman. Come to find out, I'm not. So, I realized that they just learn a lot through all of those experiences, and that God really does plan and knows our lives before any of that even happens. And so when I look at what they have had to do, those extended chores and stuff, I feel like their hearts grew a lot, because then they thought, well, they're helping mom, and we're working together even closer as a family, and we're concerned about each other and such. And so I look back on that detour and I go, you know what, that actually was a really good thing for our family. So at that point, we did have to reconsider some of the commitments. We did have to adjust our schedule. In fact, we didn't even start homeschooling until November that year, because my husband said, you need to get better. But there's other things that I tell people too, is, maybe you don't want to pause, but you just want to pull back. So I tell people, look at the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's the only way I can remember it. So, but you can adjust your schedule to provide for what you need for that self-care, so you can take care of them as well. and eliminate what you need to, outsource what you can if you need to. Sometimes there's neighbors or friends that will help you out with your children as they're working with their children. Maybe it's easier for you to take them somewhere like a music enrichment or to an enrichment day to have that day of rest. But there are a lot of things around us that we can lean on to get that help if we need to. And here again, just encouraging everybody to help. It's really just not about getting the job done, but rather what is gained throughout the process. How are their hearts growing? They're learning that teamwork, that togetherness, that responsibility, that sense of purpose. When I'm helping somebody else out, I feel that sense of purpose and just feel encouraged and filled up, Like it's, oh, there we go. So here are some of the lessons. I'm going to back that up. Here are some of the lessons that children learn through authentic experiences. And this was something one of my kids did, was make a bunch of cookies for the first responders. And we did that for Crossfire Ministries. And then we got there to deliver the cookies, and she's like, well, I need to bag them too. So all the kids just pitched in, and we all helped out. And I thought, wow, what a great opportunity to, be more filled with compassion and love and thankfulness and so on. So now I just want to talk a little bit about schedules, because we've used all of these schedules at different times in our homeschool journey. When I first started homeschooling my first child, we were more on a strict schedule. She was in a regular school for a few years before I started homeschooling. So I needed to know what I could get done. She needed to know kind of who was in charge. And I think we both needed to know, well, what was this going to look like? So we worked more on a strict schedule. Now, mind you, I only had one child that I was homeschooling at that time, so it was a little easier to do that. As time went on, and I had more children, my schedule became a lot more flexible, and to the point sometimes it was just like, what comes next? Oh, well, I got to take care of the baby. After this, we'll just get back to this, And if we didn't get everything done, we would just, do what we didn't get done the next day, or, reallocate it. The other thing that was really helpful as my little ones just got a little bit older was to develop a routine. And that was very helpful, because then my kids knew, well, I get up in the morning, then I get ready, and then we eat, and we say goodbye to Dad, and so on. So they just kind of knew what was going to happen next. And that way, I didn't have to fight with them so much. And just, you're supposed to do this next, or whatever. When things aren't the same every day, then it's hard for them to know what comes next. So that routine was really helpful in those years. And now we work kind of on a rotating schedule where, we have a routine, but we can't get everything done in the day sometimes, especially if we have some of those extracurriculars like the flying and different things like that. So we work on a rotating schedule, and we do this both with our studies, but then also with our home. And balancing the home and all the things that we have to do there with our studies is very difficult. Sometimes in the past, felt like a failure because I haven't had supper on or whatever. Haven't been able to clean in 2 weeks, as far as like a deep cleaning or something. And my husband was just so sweet, because he would say, well, you're homeschooling 5 kids, and you're taking care of, the meals and all the things. Well, you're doing like 6 or 7 jobs. And I was like, well, it made me feel a little bit better. So, those spouses are just so invaluable in how they encourage us, aren't they? So that rotating schedule, what I would do is just whatever we don't get done, we just would move to the next day. So if we didn't get math done, then math would be first the next day, and so on. So that would be how we would work that with the studies. But then we would also do that for our work around the house as well. So, maybe I had a great week, and I was able to do like dusting and vacuuming and clean the bathrooms, but I didn't get to deep clean a cabinet or something. Well, then I would know that, oh, I can put that, down the road sometime. But then maybe the next week I only got to the bathrooms. Well, then I would know maybe the next week I need to be, doing the dusting and vacuuming and so on. So we would just rotate through what we need to get done, but not have it where it needs to be done every week. So that was just one of the helpful things for me. And then scheduling tips, just if you have this time of year, what's really important, start slow. So when I start a new job, for instance, I have a hard time being very proficient. I don't know what needs to be done and what needs to be done first and so on. Well, kids are the same way. So if you just start slow, like 1 or 2 subjects, and then just add on, and maybe add on some field trips and so on, sooner or later they'll become proficient. And usually, in my experience, that's usually by week 6 to week 8 when they're like really proficient and things start running a lot smoother. So for us, staying home in the morning during study times is helpful. And then beginning with my youngest was always really helpful as well. Because if I tell my youngest ones to just go play and then I rein them back in and have them sit, it's very hard to get them to do that because they're like, well, I was just having fun and now you just stopped me from having all this great fun. But if you start with that and you start with working with them, then you can say, hey, you know what, after we get this done, we'll have ice cream, or I'll go play outside with you, or I have a game that I have planned. Then you can actually incentivize versus bringing them back. And I couldn't do this when my kids were little at all. Now that my kids are older, waking up before them has been just heavenly. It gives me wonderful time to align my spirit and plan my day and just get my mind in order. So, yeah, when you get to that point, that is wonderful. Okay, so reallocating and realigning, we talked about that, but I want to show you this. Let's see if it will link to it for me. If the internet works. Yeah. This is called the Homeschool Hub. It's a homeschool planner, but it's free. And it was made for BJU Press, but you can actually put in brush your teeth every day, or you can put in other curriculum, and just like you would on Planet or some of the other ones. So this one is pretty neat, and on my computer it logs me in, but I don't remember my password. Do you remember it? Yeah, will you come put it in? That way I can show it to you a little bit. It has a calendar, and you can reallocate on the calendar by putting in vacation time. You can just move things to the next day. It's just neat. It's been kind of a life changer for us, and we were able to beta test it for 2 years, so she loves it. So my kids, they just work on the calendar, and they can just click off what they do each day, and it'll cross it out. And so that's just so nice. And then just select you if it comes up. Just go to you. And then go to the calendar. So I love it, and I love that it's a free resource to anybody, not just BJU Press users, so I love that. It might be too slow.
It's working.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So it's an
Take a drink. Yeah, it's just homeschoolhub.com, and you can go onto it on your phone or your iPad, or you can go onto it on your computer. I think it's just being slow, huh? Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
And
it's not screen sharing though.
oh, it's not screen sharing? Okay. All right. Well, you might turn it around. Okay. Maybe if you drag it over, she said. I didn't even see that it wasn't screen sharing. We can turn it around, or you can play with it. So anyway, yeah. So the nice thing is that you can just work through the schedule, and then if you don't get through all your courses, you can just go move to the next day, or change it to the next week, or whatever you need to do. And so that's really helpful. It's homeschoolhub.com. Oh, there it is. Yay. But I don't know if it's being really slow, so it might not. So you literally would just click on, and it stopped. You would click on whatever. It just doesn't want to. Wherever you need to be. And then it will show what you need to do on it, and you can just click it off, and then it'll cross it out. So you might just play with it. It's called homeschoolhub.com, and if you have any questions, you have my information. I can help you with it too. So now, how do we get back to the other? Okay, but now I don't see it. What's that? Oh, you have to look up there. Okay. Okay, so didn't work quite as smooth as I wanted it to, but that's okay. All right. Okay, so the other things that are really helpful is to grade and sort daily if you can, and I'm not always the best at that. My grading, I like to do it every day, but I have to rely on my mom quite often, especially if I'm writing or doing blog posts or things like that. But we try to keep up with that so it doesn't become such a big chore at the end. 5 minutes, okay. And then organizing, this is what our homeschool room looks like now. But in the past, when I had little ones, we had like the little kitchen and the plastic food. And I tell you, I ate so much delicious plastic food over the years. Now, I talked about that rotating with home maintenance, but I just want to look at that just a little bit closer. If you can pinpoint like your emotive rooms, like for us, it's the kitchen and the living room are our emotive rooms. So those I want to have picked up and cleaned up by the time my husband gets home every day, and that way we can relax. And then those other rooms, like their bedrooms and maybe some of the play areas, can be addressed later on. So if you can just appoint a daily pickup area and then rotate through the rest with a deeper cleaning, then that can be very helpful. And this one I'll just touch on briefly. If you place shoes and jackets by the door, that can be really helpful. I don't know how many times my kids had one shoe on and they were looking all over the house for the other shoe when it was time to leave. So if you can put your shoes and jackets by the door, and then utilize an errand basket for yourself for things that need to leave with you. And then meal planning, one of my best tips on that is to just buy a lot of ground beef or ground turkey, whatever you use, or chicken, and go ahead and cook it and just portion it out. So when you need to make a meal, you can just add that ingredient super quick. And then, of course, all the other ones that everybody talks about, like the crock pot and pre-making meals and things like that. If you plan a breakfast full of sustenance, then especially if you're working at the kitchen table, you don't have to clean that up. You can actually just have a little picnic in your living room or outside. So breakfast of sustenance is really helpful. And what if things don't go according to plan? Well, then it's time to review. Are expectations realistic? Are we planning too much? And just rearrange and keep our goals in mind. because God already knew all the circumstances of you and your family's future before he even created them and gifted you with children. So give yourself grace. God's plans for you and your child are bigger than you can imagine. And that's the book, so. Yes, so thank you. It was a great opportunity to share with you today.
All right, are y'all good? You need to stand up and stretch. I won't be, offended. All right, ready? Okay, I'm gonna make this a little interactive because I wanna know a little bit more about you. I love that Yvonne had so many practical tools. Was some of that helpful for you? It was helpful for me, and I've been doing this for a while too. So, but yeah, I'm going to be asking questions, and it's after dinner. It's that, that time of day. So, anyway, we're gonna interact. How many of you, is this your first year homeschooling? It's just a couple. Nice. Okay. All right. You've survived so far. Okay. How many of you have been doing this for 5 years or more? Oh, nice. Okay. How many of you 10 years or more? One brave soul. She's still alive. Oh, two. Yes. Okay. All right. And that makes 3 of us. Yes. Okay. So we do survive a few more wrinkles, but we're there. Okay. Well, good. How many of you feel overwhelmed right now? Yeah. Okay. Brave. Yes. Good. All right. And some of you may have been doing this for a while and you've got it all figured out. Fantastic. I hope you got some tips from her. You get some tips from me, some things to kind of recharge your homeschool if you've already been doing this. I am going to talk through a few things. Let me introduce myself. My name is Tiffany Taylor. This is an older picture of my family, but I love it. It's kind of fun. We all love to read. That is our thing, right? My oldest wants to be a librarian when he grows up. Isn't that cute? He's 16 years old and wants to be a librarian. How many 16-year-old boys do you know who want to be librarians? But I have all boys, and they are now 16, 14, 11, and 7. So I run the gamut. And this is our 12th year of homeschooling that we're entering. And I am a support representative for Classical Conversations. Hopefully you all got a little catalog delivered to you, or you picked one up. I'm going to reference a few pictures and stuff in here. So keep that handy. You don't need it quite yet. But I just want to, if you don't get anything else, I want you to feel encouraged that you can do this. You are equipped to do this. You are qualified to do this. Those of you who have been doing it, is homeschooling hard sometimes? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But what we're doing is modeling for our kids. We can do hard things. They can do hard things, right? And that's really worthwhile. They're going to have to do hard things all through their life, and you are that model for them. So there are going to be hard days. There are also going to be really good days full of belly laughs when your little one does something really funny, or the really proud tears. Has anybody just really teared up when your kids do something? You're like, you finally got it. And it's so exciting to me. So, all right. I want to start. Okay, sorry, here we go. Oh, did I click it twice? I did. Go back. Go back. Come on, technology. I'm about to just switch. There we go. Okay. Stop. There we go. Okay. This is my husband back here who does telecom technology stuff for a living, so he's just going to sit back there and giggle at me the whole time. This is fun. All right. So I'm a support representative for Classical Conversations, which I'll touch on some, but this isn't going to be an hour-long infomercial or anything for what we do. But we are a classical Christian, and we do this in community, okay? So we use the classical methodology. If you're familiar with that at all, we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to go into a little bit about classical method and what that means and give you some tools, whether you love classical method or not, how to inspire wonder in your kids and ask good questions so that they can learn and you can learn alongside them. But what we do in CC, we meet once a week in community. We have communities all around town. We have 9 different communities in Colorado Springs, Monument, Woodland Park area, and we're worldwide. CC was founded in 1997, and we have well over 100,000 students worldwide. We are The military has really helped us spread. I think we have, CC groups in Okinawa and Germany and pretty much anywhere in the world that you want to go. So we have programs for ages 4 through 12th grade and even college credits. So like my high school junior has already got some college credits under his belt just for doing his CC work. So it's kind of fun. All right. And Yvonne touched on this a little bit with the blueprint, and I want to really help you hone in on what is your why. Why are you homeschooling? And whether it's your first year or your 15th, it's an important thing to really think through, why am I doing this? Because on the hard days, you're going to be like, that school bus that's driving by looks really good. Go get on it. Okay? And you're going to want to give up at some points. But we don't want you to. All right? So what is your why? And this is the beginning of the interactive part. I do want to hear, does anybody have, what is one of your reasons for homeschooling? Who's brave? Yes, love it.
I have 6 children and been homeschooling, and I have my first one going off to high school this year. Since she was little, I was homeschooling.
Yeah.
I remember somebody telling me, well, when I was a teacher, I gave all of the students a breast to me all day long. And then when I went home, my family's got sons. And I was like, why would I give anybody else my first and then give my family my second? And so I'm like, I really want that. And virtue. I want my children to grow up with virtue and knowing God, knowing who they are, and be able to do whatever they want, no matter how well they are in academics or not. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes,
I
that's
get to grow up
fantastic.
versus somebody else.
Right. Right.
Good or bad, right? But I think of the
Thank
weaknesses
you.
of us, like we want to see that sometimes. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's a huge gift.
It is. It is. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautifully put. Anybody else want to follow that? Oh, she does right there.
So I grew up as a daycare kid in public school. We had 4 kids, and I want my kids to have solid relationships with each other. And in a school setting, they're away from each other.
Right.
And so my husband and I talked recently about how I already have, our oldest is 10, and I already have more contact hours with my oldest than I had with my parents all the way to my adulthood.
Yeah.
And so just fostering that family togetherness and those deep relationships.
Yes. Family time is so important. Yes. You are, sending them off to public school, you're not with them for hours and hours a day, and they come home and you get their tired hours, kind of like what you were saying. Not only are you giving them your best hours, they're giving you their best hours too. Unless you have teenagers, and then they don't really wake up until 3 o'clock anyway. So. All right, one more. Anybody else? Yeah, thanks.
Well, I just had such a traumatic, public school experience myself. I was like, if I can help them avoid that.
Yeah.
And then it just, even the stuff that I studied back in my day was like, this is not, as a believer, as a Christian, it wasn't in line with what I believed. And so as I've been in the school system and taught and stuff too, looking at what's getting worse and worse, I thought, I don't want to have that, confusion, and I want
Right.
them to know the truth that I believe, and I want them to have that solid foundation.
Wonderful. Yes, these are all great reasons. And you can homeschool for reasons, or you can homeschool because you're against certain things, right? You might be against what is being taught in a public school. You might be against regulation, and that's not a bad thing. I would argue that you should eventually switch it to a for, like I'm for my freedoms. I'm for, getting to know my kids on a deeper level. Because usually if you stay in that against column, you won't last for very long, okay? So make sure you know why you're doing this. What is it for, all right? And these are y'all are on it. Y'all are on it. Y'all have got this. Okay, so what is your why? This is your first part of, I will show you, this is on page 21 in your catalog. So some of these words are really tiny, so that's why I gave you a catalog, so you can look at it. But this is a graphic that we use in classical conversations. And again, we use the classical methodology, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what the classical method means and how you can use it. What do you see in the middle here? God. Okay, so we are classical, we are Christian. So God is in the center of everything that we do. And if you are a fellow believer, God should be in the center of everything that you do as well. What do you see around God? What do those look like? It's okay. I know. You're like,
Skills that like that you learn in school.
okay, good. Yeah, or subjects.
Communicate.
Yep.
People mostly.
Yes, good. All right, so these are the things that we're learning, okay? We might learn debate, we might learn research, and these are fancy words for things like public speaking, and research is our science strand. Grammar, our students actually learn English grammar and Latin grammar. It's kind of a sneaky way to really get them into English grammar. They learn English even better when they learn Latin. Exposition is like reading and writing, and logic is math, and reasoning is logic. Isn't that fun? But we do, I know. But we teach them formal logic, like, you know, our teenagers, I pick on my teenagers, but they like to argue. Does anybody have teenagers? You have an awesome teenager. I see your shirt. She says, I have awesome teenagers. I love it. Do teenagers like to argue with you? Yes, they do. So one of our goals is to teach them how to argue respectfully and well. All right, so if you're going to make an argument, if you're going to be persuasive on a subject, on a topic, Mom, I really want a cell phone. Mom, I really want to stay up later. Mom, I don't need to brush my teeth. I did that this morning. These are things that we want to teach them how to do respectfully and well. Okay, so we give them the tools to do that. Okay, what else do you see in this diagram? What's in between those little circles? Arrows, yes. And they're all pointing to each other, and they're all pointing in towards God. It's because they all interrelate. If you went to a public school, you probably went to an English class, and then you went to a history class, and then you went to, whatever, math class. Did those teachers really talk, or, I'm going to teach them about World War II literature, so you should teach them about geography, about Poland and Germany. No, they didn't interact. They really should integrate, right? If you're reading World War II literature, then you should know the geography of that. That's something we would learn in the debate strand, by the way. You should learn the geography of that, how that impacted society, culture, what else was going on in the world. Everything relates, and it all points back to our Creator who created it all, right? So I love all of these arrows, that everything should relate. At the top, it has this word doxology. Does anybody know what doxology means? Kind of a big word that we've heard before, but do you actually know what it means? Crickets. That's okay. That's good. It's from Latin. See, you got to learn the Latin. Doxologia. And it means it's a form of praise, okay? And it's about purpose. So if you've ever sung a doxology, you are praising God. In our education, in our lives, we should be praising Him. If you are a believer, this is what our purpose is, right? We are bringing glory to God in what we do. And everything that we learn, we should have a purpose to it, okay? So here, our purpose is our doxology. Our purpose is praise. And around that, if you go down to the right, okay, there's grammar. All right, and here's your breakdown of what classical method is. We're going to talk about the trivium real briefly. Stay with me. Grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. That's what's going around this circle here. So grammar is just learning the basics of a thing. Grammar is the foundation. So if I'm going to learn the grammar of making pasta, okay, of cooking, I need to know what a pot is. I need to know how to boil water. I need to know what different kinds of pastas are, maybe. I need to know how to make pasta sauce, and maybe that's opening a jar and pouring it in. Maybe it's from scratch. Either way, those are the basics of what I need to learn, okay? And I'm following a recipe at this level of the grammar stage. The next one comes dialectic, and this one's upside down. You're welcome. And this is understanding. This is wrestling. That's my favorite word for the dialectic arts, wrestling. So what happens if I boil the pasta a little bit longer? Well, it doesn't turn out very good. That's your tip for the day. Don't do it. What happens if I add this spice to the pasta sauce? What happens if, so you're playing with those things, you're wrestling, you are adding things, you're making it your own, okay? So with a recipe, you're experimenting, okay? And then by the time you get to the rhetoric, You are a master pasta maker, okay? You can be like these lovely ladies and make pasta to bless others, okay? You can feed other people. You can teach other people how to make pasta, all right? So anything that we need to learn, anything, you can go through the grammar, the dialectic, and the rhetoric. And we should go through the grammar, the dialectic, and the rhetoric. Have any of you ever tried to do something like you just jump right in? I've done this with gardening. Like, I'm going to go to the store and I will buy a tomato plant and I will plant it in my ground and it will just grow, right? It should just thrive. And it never happens. Why is it? It always dies, right? 100% of the time I kill it. Because I didn't take my time at the grammar. I have no idea if my soil is any good. No idea. I don't know how much water it needs or how much sunlight. Did I plant it in too much sun? Like, I should have stopped and gone back to the grammar of the thing, right? And learn those basics before I have ruined a tomato plant again. All right. So anything you want to learn. You want to learn a language? You got to start with the grammar, right? If you want to learn, I don't know, who has a hobby? I always love getting hobbies. You all have hobbies, right? Something, I know, we're parents. What was that? Goats. Okay. I am at the grammar stage of goats. I don't know much, except we have a neighbor who has one. And yes, it jumps a lot. I don't know.
Which is odd.
That is odd.
That an animal with hooves could climb, but they do.
But they can. All right, so you are probably rhetoricians when it comes to goats. No, you're still, she's in the wrestling stage. So
You get a goat to have babies.
I cannot help you there. I'm sorry. Moving on. I should have gone with someone else. All righty then. But you get the point. Anything you want to learn, you can go through these stages. That's hilarious. I've never had goats given to me. All right. This is also, you should have a handout with this, and it's in your catalog on page 7. These are some classical tools, okay? These are just tools to put in your tool belt. On page 7, you have 15 tools there, okay? And we're going to go through 5 of them today. That's it, all right? Just 5. And there's a nice little handy acronym to go with it, a little mnemonic. Names, all right? That's how you can remember them. And the first one is naming, okay? We can do this. We can do this. Okay. These are 5 different tools to have a conversation, to learn about anything, all right? These are called the 5 core habits of grammar. 5 core habits. The first one is naming. Know the appropriate word. And we're going to go through an example in a minute, okay? Attending, differentiate the word from other known ideas. Okay, so if I wanted to name, what is the name of a female goat versus a male goat?
It could be a doe or a nanny.
A doe. Who knew that? Marcia Brower, back in the back. All right. A doe or a nanny?
Yeah.
Okay,
Usually
yes.
a doe, like, for farming purposes.
Well, there you go. Okay, so we learned something new. We learned some vocabulary, right? That's naming a thing. Okay, attending. We might differentiate between, a nanny goat and a cow. I don't know. They both give milk, right? So you could compare them.
Like a doeling would be like a baby one.
A doeling.
You could do
Oh,
like, first
I like that.
fresher. That's somebody who they just had their first set of babies, which our goats haven't.
Someone, please, Marcia, help her out with her goat baby problem, all right? Okay, so that's attending. We're attending to these goats. Memorizing, we might want to memorize. I bet none of you will forget now that it's a doe and a doeling. I think that's adorable. That's a good name. All right, so you might need to memorize things to build your knowledge base. Expressing, use the body and senses to share knowledge. Expressing could just be saying it out loud. Doe, a goat, a female goat. I don't know. Storytelling. You never know what you're going to get when I get up here. I do not prepare these things. Okay, storytelling. This could be telling a story. Does anyone have a good story about a goat? Like you have 3 Billy Goats Gruff, right? What, you had a story, sir?
That's a story, yeah. Well, we lived in Western Washington when I was growing up, and we moved to Eastern Washington, and we had a goat called Romancer. And
That's a good
my
one.
mom was a canner, so when they moved, she canned the goat. And,
She canned the goat?
she canned the goat because we were moving from a farm to So,
Slightly appalled. Anyone else?
I got to stay in the basement for like 20 years.
Poor romancer. Did you ever eat romancer? I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Okay. Next slide. All right. Okay. They haven't gotten to that stage yet of eating their goats. All right. We are going to practice. Okay? All right. Ooh. What do we see? This doesn't show up super well, but that's okay. It doesn't really when you take a picture of something that's super far away anyway. Anybody have an idea what this is? It is a galaxy. It is not the Milky Way, but they are similar in many ways. This is a spiral galaxy. This one is called M101, right? You all knew that. No, it's also referred to as the pinwheel galaxy. Can you kind of tell why it's called the pinwheel galaxy? Yeah, it's a spiral. Okay. Does anybody, like, any of you in space, like, what do they call them, space cadets now, right, at the Air Force Academy? No, for real, it's a name. Space cadets. Okay, no space cadets. Okay, so I can make up anything and you'll buy it. Great. Okay, so this is a spiral galaxy, for real, so it is. It's called M101. And what I want to do is practice with these names tools. So hopefully you have your handout or your catalog. On page 7, it has all of those tools, okay, that we just went over. They're at the top of the page. Naming, attending, memorizing, expressing, and storytelling. All right, let's pretend we'll walk through this with different age groups, okay? But let's pretend like we have an 8-year-old, all right? You can kind of picture an 8-year-old. And you came across this in a book. And your 8-year-old wants to know a little bit more, all right? So what might we do? What might we go through with an 8-year-old? And let's use our names tools, okay? And we don't have to go in order. That's a good thing, right? Those are. We can start with attending, which really can just be, what do you see? Think like an 8-year-old. What might an 8-year-old say? See, now you don't have any, like there are no dumb answers, right? Because you're an 8-year-old now, so, okay. Pressure's off. What might an 8-year-old say? What'd you say? Swirly stars. Swirly stars. I love it. It's even alliterative. Swirly stars. Yes, a bright light in the middle. What else? Tell me about its shape. I already told you. What is it? It reminds me of a pinwheel. Good. Good, like you could just blow on it. Good. Okay. So if I'm attending to the details, I want to draw attention to the shape because I'm going to end up differentiating between this and other types of galaxies. So yeah, what you said about it looking like a pinwheel, that's perfect. And that might lead into naming that this is a spiral galaxy. Repeat after me, spiral galaxy. You remember a lot of what you say, and so I don't usually tell my kids, repeat after me, but I'm like, hey, say that, spiral galaxy, spiral galaxy. Okay, good. So if we want our little 8-year-old to memorize something, what might we want him to memorize? Maybe the name, spiral galaxy, right? Do you know what galaxies are made of? Stars, yes. What was that? You said stars. Yes, they are made of stars. Anything else? Planets. They can have planets. Yep, ours does for sure. We're on one. Yep. Gases? Yes. Yes, sir. Dust. Dust, not just like the dust in our house. It could be rocks and ice. There's space dust. Does anybody know what these things are? Like over here, that's bright. Out on the side, you kind of. What do you think? Clouds. Space clouds. Love it. Yes. That's a nebula right there. So a nebula is like a birthplace for stars. That's how stars are born. It's not really like the movie, right? The stars are really born in nebula. So yeah, there are stars, there's dust, there are gases. Good. Excellent. Okay. If we want them to express something that they've learned, how might we have them express what they've learned? Coloring. Yes, exactly. We might have them draw a diagram of a spiral. You know, they can color a picture. You can give them a picture to color. They can, you know, it depends on your 8-year-old skills. They can try to draw one, right? Most of them can probably draw a spiral. Yes, what else? Do a dance. Yes, I can imagine, like, I'm a spiral, right? I can see some interpreter dances going on in my house. She talked about kinesthetic learners. What might a kinesthetic learner do? Drawing is great. What else? Sculpting. Yes, that's what I'm picturing, is putting together a model with Play-Doh or something. Did you have another answer? I thought I heard something else. I'm pointing at you. I'm sorry. It's rude. Teach your children not to point. Okay. Okay, so that's expressing. Storytelling. This one's a little tricky, but storytelling could be telling somebody else about their, look at this picture that I drew, Daddy. You know, I drew a picture of a spiral galaxy. Oh, and here's another one. These are arms. These are the arms of the spiral, you know. So if you're teaching them, then they express it, they storytell it to someone else. They could make up a story about a galaxy. They could travel to a galaxy far, far away. Oh, somebody already did that. Okay, so that was an 8-year-old. Let's look at it again through the eyes of a 13, 14-year-old. Okay, so we're going to start over. What might you want them to memorize? What might they name? Would you have a different expectation maybe of an 8-year-old and a 14-year-old?
They could name this galaxy.
They could what?
They could remember the name of this galaxy.
Yes, they could.
Figure out where it is in relation to our galaxy.
Yes.
How did we get that picture?
Exactly. Yes. How did we get that picture? That's an excellent question. And hopefully all of these things that they learn will lead to more questions, right? Where did this come from? How do we do that? You know, and then you can find out this was taken from the Hubble telescope. Is the Hubble telescope still around? What's our new telescope called? You know, we have the James Webb now. Why is there another one? What happened to the Hubble? See how questions lead to questions lead to questions. And if you can tell when they're done, you know, when they're like, okay, that's enough. And you can tell when they want to know more. And you can kind of see the wheels spinning in their brains like a spiral galaxy. See what I did there? All right, you're welcome. So for a 14-year-old, we might want them to memorize the name of it, M101, named after Messier. Who was Messier? I have no idea, but that's the name. Pinwheel Galaxy, where is it? It's in Ursa Major. Yeah, that's about the extent of my knowledge. Don't ask me any more questions. But a 14-year-old might memorize those things. Okay, expressing. How might a 14-year-old express?
You might make one out of paper mache.
Great. Yeah. How else can they make one? They can also draw it, and it probably look a little bit better, hopefully, than the 8-year-olds. They might want to compare different types of galaxies, because there are more than just spiral galaxies out there. There are irregular ones, and the one that I never remember, there's another type. It'll come to me. But there are other types of galaxies, and they could compare them and make a poster maybe of all 3 types. What else? Any other expressing ideas you can think of for a 14-year-old?
We already said art, but I'm thinking like spray paint.
Ooh, I like that. That's a fun medium, yes.
Jackson Pollock painting there.
Yeah,
About that.
it does. I don't know if y'all heard that. It looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. It does. It does. That's great. All right, so great. Y'all have some wonderful ideas that I didn't come up with. Storytelling, they might want to memorize a poem about space or about stars or about galaxies. They might want to, again, telling someone else about what they learned, that's storytelling. It's fantastic. All right. You feel like you're getting this? I'm going to give you another one. Let's see what time it is. We're good. Okay. Isn't this a cute picture? Now I want to look for a picture of a goat. I'm just All right. Let's imagine we have a little again. Okay, so let's go back to our 8-year-old. What do you see, 8-year-olds? A frog and a butterfly. Water. Yes, big eyes. Reflection. Nice. Yeah. What was that?
A lot of green.
A lot of green. Yeah, pay attention to color. It's a beautiful picture. What do you think the frog is on? A lily pad? It's kind of hard to see. Yeah. Okay, so our 8-year-old, we might want to name different things. We might want to talk about the life cycle of a frog. Maybe this is something that is in your science book that you're learning about the life cycle, and maybe you talk about the life cycle. Maybe you see something like this when you're out on a nature walk and you just want to talk about the frog. Where does the frog live? Do you guys know this? Yeah, in a pond. Can frogs live on land and on water? What does that make them? Amphibians. Some of you have taught, 3rd grade science. Good job. That's great. Yeah, so that might be a word that you want them to memorize. Okay, so whatever you're teaching, think about what do we want them to walk away with? Do we want them to memorize, amphibian, or is it the frog's life cycle, tadpole, all of those things? Or do we just want them to look and wonder and ask lots of questions? And that's great too. And maybe it inspires them to go to the library and go look up books on frogs or on butterflies. Maybe they skip the frog altogether and they're like, look at the butterfly, that's amazing. And we talk about butterflies. That's great too, okay? And that, again, is the wonder of homeschooling, that you're not checking a box. We have to learn about frogs today. When I really want to look at the butterfly, don't miss the beauty of the butterfly and think, I have to look at the frog. Okay. All right, so if we are a 14-year-old, what might we want to learn about the frog? How might it look different? What might we name? It's okay if you don't know the names. A type of frog? Yeah, you might want to look at different types of frogs. I have no idea different types of frogs. I'm assuming there are. Bullfrog and that's it. TCU has a frog, right? What were you going to say? Classification, yes. We could classify the living things. Find out what kingdom, it's an Animalia, what phylum, what class. Good. All right, so we figure out what to name. What if your 14-year-old might be old enough to dissect a frog? Kind of like poor romancer in a can. Man, I'm thinking about that for a while. But if he was going to dissect a frog, he would need to know the different parts of the frog, right? Its anatomy. We'd learn, the frog is laid out a lot like a human. That's why we dissect them so often. Yeah, but they have the same basic parts, but they do have different ones, right? They have legs that jump. Their legs are different. Who knows a lot about frogs and is just laughing at me right now? Okay, good. Okay, so do you see how you can use this for different age groups? Yeah? Maybe? Okay. How they might express themselves a little bit different. You might have them name and memorize and attend to different things. But you can all be looking at the same thing. If you're on a nature walk with your 8-year-old and your 14-year-old, you can have a lovely discussion with both of them and meet them both where they're at and draw them out with these tools, okay? So there are more on here. Again, there are 15 classical tools that are listed here. They're the 5 common topics and the 5 canons of rhetoric. These are fantastic. And there's more information about them through the catalog too. But all right, let's see. Oh, a question, yes. Do you need to know? That's a wonderful question. I'm glad you asked that. Yes. Does anybody, are you an expert on all the things? All the things? No. Yes. No. I am not. I am a lead learner in my house. I want to instill wonder. I want my kids to want to know more. And there are things that they're going to want to know more than I want to know. I think I've reached my limit on Legos. I just don't want to learn anything else about Legos. But my kids do. They want to learn how to build taller and I don't know, whatever. But yeah, if I don't know, I help them research it. Those are great tools too, right? How do you use the library? How do you use the internet? Things have changed from when I was in school and we had, a set of World Book encyclopedias at home and that was the extent of our knowledge base. Now we have the world at our fingertips. So, and that's something else to help them with. It is there. Technology is there whether we like it or not. It's a wonderful tool and we have to teach them how to use it wisely, right? So That's great. But yeah, we in classical conversations, we call ourselves lead learners a lot because we don't know everything. We are not experts in everything, but we can still equip them. I'm teaching my kid, going through chemistry with him this year, and my second kid is like this big math whiz that I don't know. We're going to have to dive into calculus next year, and that's going to be all you, honey. No, I can sit next to him and learn alongside him and at least know how to ask good questions. How did you get that answer? There are so many things that I can do that I don't have to just say, I can't do that. You're going to school, We're doing it. We're doing the hard things together, side by side. And it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. That was a great question. Any other questions come to mind right now? Oh, you've been a great audience. It's great. Okay. Let's see. I want to point out a few resources here for classical conversations and for whatever. Okay, this book, The Core, this was written by Lee Bortons. All three of these, we call them the Bortons trilogy. But Lee Bortons founded Classical Conversations, and she is legit, like she was a rocket scientist, and she started this Classical Conversations. The Core is all about how to educate your young ones, okay? So we're talking about like elementary age. And it's not that thick, but it has a chapter on how to teach your kids math, how to teach your kids writing, how to teach them geography. She walks through how to teach them to do blob maps. That's how we start. In our Classical Conversations programs, in our 7th grade year, the kids learn how to draw the world from memory. So I've had 2 kids who have gone through this, and sure enough, like by the end of the year, I can give them a blank piece of paper and they can draw the whole world. And it's amazing. And like, here are the 50 whatever countries in Africa. They know more than I do. I am redeeming my education right alongside them. And it's so wonderful. And that's our privilege as their lead learners, as their teachers, that I've learned Latin right alongside them. I did not know Latin I didn't learn that in school, but I'm learning it now. I learned a lot in kindergarten from homeschooling my kindergartners. Like, I don't know. I learn alongside them. Okay, so the core is like elementary age. The question is those middle schoolers. They ask a lot of questions. That's how you can remember that one. And how to start beefing it up and how to really meet your kids where they are. And then the conversation is those high school. And it really falls along with grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. If you think about how child development, how they develop when they're young, they memorize things really well, whether you want them to or not, they do. They pick up the jingles on TV and whatever. But you teach them the ABC song. You teach them Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. You teach them all those things, and they soak it up. They know the ABC song before they know what it is. Right? They don't know how to apply it, but they know it. Okay, so grammar, we can also apply that to our stages of learning. Okay, so our little ones, they soak up that information. The middle learners, they're wrestling with information and they're dialectic. They ask a lot of questions and they're trying to figure out, I learned this stuff when I was younger. I learned that Columbus sailed in 1492, but why? And why did he leave from a country that wasn't his own? He was Italian. He didn't leave from Italy. Why not? What was going on in America at the same time? Well, I know this was going on and this was, and they start tying those things together, and it's so great. So that's dialectic. And then the rhetoric, we could equate that with our older learners when, maybe junior or senior in high school, when they're writing poetry and they're expressing themselves well. They can persuade others to truth. That's really our goal. The goal of a classical education is to lead people to truth, goodness, and beauty. That's really the basic of it. Truth, goodness, and beauty. And so by the time our kids graduate, we hope they're able to express themselves a little bit better, and persuade others to truth. That's kind of the goal of rhetoric. I put my email address up here. I am happy to answer questions and stuff. And I ended a little bit early. I got like 4 minutes, I think, by my clock. So does anyone have any questions? You've been an excellent audience. This has been great. Yes?
So you mentioned that you meet in groups once a week. So what does this practically look like in a week, and how does it tie in? Like, what are the curriculum
Yes. So Classical Conversations has a curriculum that we follow. And the back part of this is kind of like it's a catalog. The first part is a magazine, and the back is a catalog with lots of stuff that you can buy. You do not need all this stuff to homeschool, and you don't need it all to be in our programs. But we have in our younger years, we call it foundations from ages 4 through 12. And they memorize a lot of stuff. That's kind of the crux of the younger years in the classical education. Because of that grammar, they memorize super well, okay? So we teach them facts about history, science, English grammar, Latin, a timeline. They memorize a 161-point timeline while they're in that. And my kids can recite it. It's amazing. You want me to say? Somebody's heard of CC. Timeline. No. I won't sing it, but it's like a 14-minute song that starts with creation and it ends with September 11th. So it's kind of neat. But they memorize that through the year. They memorize math facts. They do fun games. They do presentations every single week so that, how many of you would be terrified to come up here and speak? Maybe you're too terrified to raise your hand to tell me that you would be terrified. No. They do a presentation in front of their peers every single week so that from the time they're 4 years old, and maybe at the 4 years old, it's like, this is my favorite stuffed animal, and its name is Bob, the end. And then they ask, do you have any questions? And they learn how to field questions from their peers. So they start out there. Once they hit 9 years old, we have something called Essentials where we dig in really deep to English grammar. I was an English major and a technical writer and editor, and I learned a ton from Essentials. We diagram sentences. You learn what a predicate nominative is, if you don't know what that is. We learn all those parts of speech and how they work together. And they do IEW, if you're interested, or if you're familiar with that. That's a pretty popular program for writing. The fun starts in the challenge years. It's all fun, but it really gets good in the challenge years from 7th grade up, once they're 12 years old. Then they have all of those strands that I showed you, those little circles, like debate. They learn how to debate. They learn to draw the world from memory. They're giving speeches in class. They read great literature and write papers. They learn how to write persuasively. They learn Latin. That's kind of a crux of a classical education. Every year has its different highlights. They compete in a mock trial in front of a real judge. We have a federal judge who will listen to our trials. It's amazing. They study Shakespeare and they write poetry. They do dissections, fun stuff. Maybe a goat someday. You want to donate a goat? All those great things. Every year of challenge is great, and it ends with a senior thesis where they have to write a big paper and then deliver it and have it critiqued by judges, and then they have to stand in front of a panel of judges, give a persuasive speech about their topic, and then stand ready to defend their thesis. I know, it's pretty impressive. So, and I'm not giving it all justification in my little 2-minute spiel, but this catalog is fantastic if you want to look at it and see what we do. Yeah. And I'm here if you have any questions. I'm getting it's time. Look, so I appreciate you guys.
Tiffany some appreciation.